Since the first intro lesson dealt with details of what are the APIs or application programming interfaces and how we can use them, we will mostly focus on building another fun application using the APIs here. And while we're fetching Bitcoin prices in the first example, here we will pursue pure fun of telling jokes or alternative facts about an American icon, Chuck Norris. His over-the-top matcha on-screen persona created a cult following and a slew of made-up facts about him. So one repository of jokes about him is set up by API ninjas, who also provide all the documentation and examples of how to communicate with their server. One thing that is different from the first example on Bitcoin is that API ninjas request an API key for access, which is free after registration. So we will here also demonstrate how to use an API key as well. Here in the blocks I already copied my API key, creating a variable API key that we would use when communicating with their server. But before we build the blocks themselves, just a quick look of what we already placed in the designer window. There's a button we call Chuckle that when we click we would obtain a joke, and it will be displayed in the text box that we already called a joke. Also, as we know, we need a web component here for internet communication through APIs. Now let's first quickly build the blocks, which is played here at triple speed to save time. So first, right here at the top, we initialize our API key global variable, which is just a long string text that is obtained from API ninjas for free. And you will need to obtain and copy your own API key right here. Next, we will need a variable where we will store a response from the API Ninja server after we make a query, which we initialize here as API response global variable. Here, the first action of the app is to send a query to the server using the web component. First, we point the request to the proper web address. Again, this is given to us by the API Ninja's website. And then we need to incorporate our API key. Their protocol requires the API key in a header with the syntax of a list, which also looks a lot like a dictionary because it starts with the key name first and then is followed by the second item in the list, which is the actual API key. We should note here that the API key integration may be requested in a different way by different API hosts. Here, we are ready to send a query and fetch the API server response. And the last step is triggered once this response is received, right here, where one got text. First, we check the response code. And if the response code is 200, that means that there was a successful communication with the server. If so, we're going to decode the whole response content right here as JSON, JavaScript object notifier, which is another typical way of data structuring and was covered in the lesson about dictionaries. Compared to rather complex JSON structure for fetching Bitcoin in the first API lesson. Here there's only a simple pair of the label joke and its value, the joke itself, which is the joke we're trying to obtain, to retrieve. Hence, a simple procedure from this dictionary is simply to get the value for this key, which is a joke, in a dictionary, which is the global API response, right, which is set right here. And then we set this obtained joke to be displayed in our text box as text. We also had an alternative text display right here in case that the response code was not 200 when there was, say, some issue in the communication with the... Well, that's it. All that's left is to demonstrate this app and make sure everything works as advertised. So one thing you notice here is that instead of a usual emulator, this time we use AI Companion, which is directly mirrored from my phone in this case. One more thing that we're going to do is to make things visually more fun. We will also assign image from a free domain of Chuck right here to our button. And once we do that, then every time we click on this button, on his image, below the button, the joke itself will be displayed. So let's check. First time we click on the image, there is a first joke. Next time we click, there is another one, and so on. So this concludes our second lesson on building the API-based apps.